Hello everybody, and today we are going to start the journey of talking about my story. Now, just a request for anyone who might know me, might be able to identify me or something. I do ask that you don't identify me publicly because at this time my biological mother is still living and there is some risk of her acting up again and trying to come after me if she does see any of these videos. So I do ask, just do not identify me publicly. But I do want to share my story because I feel that it's important to help share with people my journey and how coming from a very, very poor, very bad situation, how you can rise above that and you can make a difference in your life. You are not stuck in your situation. It's only a temporary situation. You can always rise above and you can change your life. Just one more warning before we get started that this video will discuss abuse, neglect, foster care, and some other sensitive subjects. So just be advised if you do continue on that those kind of subjects will be discussed. So let's get started. All right, in this video I want to discuss birth to about 3 years old. That's when a majority of the time I spent with my biological mother was. Well, really all of the time I spent with my biological mother was. And starting kind of before my birth, my parents met in a larger town in the US, and they both worked in a factory together. They had a very destructive relationship. And these are stories I've kind of gathered from my biological father. Their relationship was quite destructive. There was a lot of alcohol abuse involved in the relationship. And I do personally believe that my mother manipulated my father for housing, a relationship, someone to be with her. She has a lot of mental problems. And I do believe that she took advantage of the situation. But I have no proof of that. It's just kind of my speculation. So their relationship was very destructive. It was kind of a codependent relationship. They kind of needed each other and it just worked out for them at the time. Eventually my mother ended up getting pregnant and the relationship fell apart. My father did not know about me, did not know that she was pregnant. She just kind of took off, which is her thing. When you get into trouble with, or you get into a rough situation with her, she takes off. Goes God only knows where, but she just goes. So she ended up staying in this large town and I was born. Immediately after I was born, I ended up getting put in foster care. She had no intention of keeping me. There were a lot of issues rattling around in her brain when I was born. Part of it was that I am part Hispanic. She is completely white and I'm part Hispanic. And she could not handle that. Her mother, my grandmother, was very racist. And I really shouldn't say racist, but she did not like people of color. She just didn't. I don't know what the situation was, if it was because she was from a small town and she wasn't exposed to a lot of people of color, or what the situation was, but she did not like people of color. My grandfather was okay with it, which would have been my mother's father. He was okay with it. He was in World War II and he traveled around the world, so he met a lot of people of color and understood that there's no difference. We're all the same other than our skin color, which makes no difference. But my grandmother wasn't that accepting of it, and I think that's kind of what had my mother rattling around with so many ideas in her brain, was because she didn't know what to do. She wanted to make her parents happy, but she didn't know what to do. And deep down, she knew that with her situation, she couldn't handle a child. So anyways, she gave me up. My grandmother somehow found out that I was in foster care and that I was in this big town. So she traveled there, came and got me, and case was closed in this big town. I came back to the small town and ended up with her for a short time. Somehow my mother ended up coming back to the small town and changed her mind, wanted her daughter back. So I ended up getting back with my mother decided to take care of me. From the time my mother had me until I was taken away from her at age 3, a lot of stuff happened. And some of this is hard to talk about, so if there's a pause or something, just bear with me. Trying the best to tell my story in the best way that I can. But my mother was physically, emotionally, and psychologically abusive. And if you do see me looking down, I've just got some notes of some points that I just want to make sure that I address. So when she came here and took me back from my grandparents, she started to have second thoughts again. And she specifically said that she could not handle having a biracial child. So she couldn't handle me being part Hispanic. I don't know if there were some issues between her and her mother regarding that or not. I don't know. I, of course, wasn't there. But she ended up calling social services yet again. So social services sends over the police to come do a welfare check and stuff like that prior to getting me. And they come over and she has changed her mind. Lo and behold, the woman has changed her mind again. So they make notes of it, and in their file they state that they feel they might be dealing with a mental patient. But they just made notes of it and just left it at that. Okay, well, whatever that is, but yeah, they thought they were dealing with a mental patient, but they just left me there with her. So, okay, because she had changed her mind. All right, well then. And a lot of this stuff is just kind of, like I said, hearsay, and I do have my file, and I have read it, and a lot of this stuff is in my file as well. But some of the things my mother would do, she had a drinking problem. She had a drinking problem since before I was born, like I said, in her other previous relationship. She had a horrible drinking problem. And I was actually born at a low birth weight, which is indicative of her not taking care of herself and her possibly using alcohol during pregnancy. We don't know for sure because we can't get those records because they're all in her name and she's entitled to her privacy. But anyways, so yeah, I was born at a low birth weight as well. But she loved alcohol. So she would take me with her to a bar. And she would actually lock me in the car while she went in the bar and drank. Keep in mind, this is all under 3 years old. This video is strictly 3 and under. So, from my start, when I was a young child, I was getting locked in the car while she went to the bar. Alright? Yeah, whatever you got to say about that. And a lot of this stuff was found out when I was finally taken away and lived with my foster parents, and we'll talk about more of that in the next videos. But when I was naughty, or so she claimed I was bad, she would leave me in a park for hours by myself. She would drop me off, drive away, go do her thing, probably drink, and then she would come back and pick me up as if nothing had happened. I would just stand there and wait for her. 3 years old, stand there and wait for her. And then she'd come pick me up. One of her favorite things to do, and I'm going to try to adjust this a little bit because the sun's kind of getting out of control here, making me look like I am a grease monkey. But one of the things she loved to do was threaten to drown me, threaten to throw me in the river. I knew I couldn't swim. I knew that water was not a good thing. And so she liked to use that fear to control me. So she would always threaten to throw me in the river or let me drown. Or she'd threaten to drown me in the bathtub. Kind of wonderful things to say about your child. But that's what she would do. One of the things that eventually got social services involved was she started chasing me around the house with knives and a shotgun. And she would use language that's inappropriate for YouTube, so we're just going to say she would just call me a female dog and other stuff like that, and she'd chase me around the house wishing I'd never been born, this, that, or the other. and terrorize me. I remember hiding under the table, kitchen table. I remember hiding in corners. I remember being terrified of the train that went by, because she would at times threaten to park the car on the railroad tracks and let the train hit us both. So she obviously had some suicidal ideation during that time as well. Her favorite thing to give me for dinner, or meals in general when I did get to eat, was peanut butter. As you can see, I've made up for lost time eating, you know. She'd throw me a jar of peanut butter. There's your dinner. Okay. But she did have a lot of anger problems throughout the entire story. When my grandparents came over, if they said anything that she did not like, she would start yelling. She would throw things at them. She would, "This is my daughter," etc. She just did not like to have anyone undermine her or her ability to care for me. People would point out things like, you know, you really should get her some new clothes. Don't do that. Don't do that. She doesn't like that. And she did take me to some daycares, a big local daycare. And the daycare noticed things, but sadly they never reported anything. They noticed when she'd pick me up that she'd want to go right away, want to leave. And she'd, "Come on, let's go, let's go, let's go." And I'd still want to play. And she'd get rough with me, trying to get me to leave. And then when I did come over to her crying and upset because I had to leave, then she'd be real over affectionate with me. And she'd be hugging me and kissing me. And they noticed this as weird behavior, but they never reported anything. So that was interesting. Finally, when I was 3 years old, my grandparents had had enough of watching this nonsense. They tried talking sense into her. Nothing worked. So they called social services. They reported the abuse, the neglect, the emotional abuse, physical abuse, psychological abuse. And I was removed from the home. I remember that day. Many people would say, "You don't remember it, you're traumatized," etc. Well, with some of my chronic illnesses, I do have central sensitization syndrome, or just a central sensitization problem where I'm very sensitive to the vibes and energy around me. And I also do remember things that many people wouldn't. But I remember the day that I got taken away. The police and social workers shown up at my house, and my mother was hysterical. Oh my God, she was hysterical. She was screaming, yelling, threatening. The police had to take her away in cuffs. They had to take her, they literally had to body slam her, take her away in cuffs because she was kicking, spitting, biting, the whole 9 yards. She did not want to go. But at that point, she was the only person that, for me, was always there. In the sick, twisted way that sounds, she was the only person that was always there. So I remember sitting in the back of the social worker's car just bawling and screaming as she is getting body slammed and cuffed and the whole 9 yards, getting thrown into the police car because, they're not going to put up with this nonsense. It's like, woman, you either get your act together and get in the car, or we're going to get you in there. And she always chooses to do everything the hard way, never the easy way. So that was rough, getting taken away from her. I was very scared, very timid. I did end up getting placed in a temporary foster home for, it could have been a week, could have been a couple days. Sense of time really kind of blended all together at that point. And I remember there were it was definitely a temporary foster home. There were lots of bunk beds. I was in a room with a lot of bunk beds. I remember laying in the bunk bed just looking at the closet. I did enjoy the other kids that were around. I remember that. I did enjoy them, but I spent a lot of time just not knowing what to do with myself because I was so scared. But the foster home was great. The lady, she gave me a bath that night, was able to wash my hair that was, of course, tangled because my good old mother, you know, did absolutely zero with taking care of me. But anyways, I remember the lady just brushing my hair that night, and it felt so good to actually have somebody care about me and to brush my hair. I just remember her running the brush through my hair over and over and over, and she commented on how beautiful my hair was and how beautiful I was and everything. And I still remember that to this day. I still do. And it's a really good memory, really kind of neat to know that there are foster homes out there, even temporary ones, that care a lot and that see some of this horrible stuff, but they don't lose their faith in humanity. They keep continuing to do what they have to do to help children. And they bought me some clothes and stuff and added stuff to my wardrobe, because a lot of the clothes I came from my mother in were thin, holes in them, too small, it stained beyond belief. And the foster care lady had said that everything that I came with to her house had to be washed because it smelled and it was just awful. So that was kind of rough, but it all worked out for the best. So then, I don't know if it was a week or a day or how long I stayed at that temporary foster home. Then I was brought to my permanent foster home. And I remember pulling in the driveway with the social worker, and the foster parents came out to greet me. And I was just very scared. I never knew how to act. And that was because with my biological mother, every time you're naughty, you get left in a park, you get chased around the house with a butcher knife, a shotgun, you get locked in a car, you get locked outside, you know, stuff like that. So I was always super obedient. That was something that was in my file. I was always super obedient. And it was because I was terrified of doing anything wrong, because I assumed those behaviors were normal, that everybody did that, because that's how I was raised with my biological mother. So I came to this house, walked up the stairs, I sat in a rocking chair at the top of the steps, and I sat there for hours. I don't know how long I sat there. And every time the foster parents would try to get me to come play or something, I was always so nervous. And the social worker had said, just let her do her own thing, let her get accustomed, she will open up and do things at her own time, her own pace. And because, like I said, I was terrified. Whenever you're naughty, you get threatened to get thrown in the river or some oddball crap like that, you know? So I sat in that chair for a long time, that I remember. And eventually I did open up and learn to trust my foster parents, and my foster parents went through a lot for me. A lot that I would never be able to repay them for, but that's going to kind of be following in the next video. But this is the story of living with my biological mother and getting taken away. So I'm going to stop the video for today. Once again, if you do know me or figure out who I am via the story or even where I'm located, I do ask that you please do not identify me publicly, because at the time of this recording in 2021, my biological mother is still alive. And as you can see from some of the stuff I've just told you, she's not a very stable woman. The goal of this video is to help people who might have been in similar situations. And I want to tell my story to help others understand that anything is possible. You may come from the most beat down place in your life where you feel hopeless, you feel like there is no tomorrow, but you can get up, you can move on, you can make anything happen. And as we go on with this story, you're going to see that there were many people who had no hope in me because of my biology, where I came from. They had no hope in me. But I overcame it all. I overcame it all. And that is what I want to share with my story. Always remember, you are loved. If you feel like you're not loved by anyone, know that you're loved by me. You're valued by me. And you can reach out anytime. Reach out anytime. I do monitor the comment section, and I encourage people to comment. You are loved by me. If you ever need help, there is help out there. And anything is possible. So, I'll see you in the next video.